February 11th, 2012. The Beverly Hilton Hotel. Glittering, golden, alive with music. Down the hall in room 434, silence. Whitney Houston, the voice of a generation, was found submerged in a bathtub, the echoes of her final song still floating somewhere in the night. When the news broke, the world stopped breathing. For millions, it wasn't just the loss of a singer. It was the end of something pure, something luminous that had once made the world believe in miracles. America didn't just mourn Whitney Houston, it mourned a part of its own soul. She had been the voice, the one that could rise from a whisper to a storm, that could turn a pop song into a prayer, that could make even the hardest hearts believe in love again. From church pews to the biggest stages on earth, she sang not to impress, but to heal. She sold more than 200 million records, won 6 Grammys, and shattered barriers as one of the first Black women to conquer both music and film with grace and power. She was beauty, talent, and divinity rolled into one, a gift that seemed almost too perfect for this world. But fame is never gentle, and for Whitney, every note she sang carried a weight of expectation, of pain, of the endless hunger for love. She once said, "The biggest devil is me. I'm either my best friend or my worst enemy." And when her light finally went out that February evening, it didn't just leave darkness. It left silence. A silence so deep, it felt like the end of an era. Because Whitney Houston didn't just sing songs, she sang memories. And when she died, America wept. Not only for the star she was, but for the woman we never truly knew. Whitney Elizabeth Houston was born on August 9, 1963, in Newark, New Jersey, into a world already vibrating with music. Her mother, Cissy Houston, was a gospel singer who had shared stages with Aretha Franklin and Elvis Presley. Her cousin was Dionne Warwick, and her godmother, Aretha herself. Music wasn't just in Whitney's home, it was in her blood. From the very beginning, she stood out. As a child, she sang in the church choir at New Hope Baptist. Her voice, pure, tender, overflowing, made grown men cry. She didn't imitate anyone. Even at 11, she had that rare gift. She didn't just sing the notes, she felt them. Her mother trained her with discipline. "Whitney," she'd say, "you've got to mean every word you sing." And Whitney did. Every hymn, every melody became a confession, a prayer. That's where her relationship with music began. Not as performance, but as faith. Outside the church, life was harder. The streets of Newark were rough in the 1970s. Riots, racial tension, poverty. Whitney saw it all. But her mother protected her, kept her close to the music, to the sanctuary that kept her soul intact. As a teenager, she modeled for magazines and fashion campaigns. Her face, radiant, elegant, magnetic, appeared on covers long before her voice was known. But modeling was never her destiny. Whenever she entered a room, people turned, not because of beauty, but because of that invisible presence, that aura of something extraordinary waiting to happen. By 16, she was recording background vocals for her mother's shows, sometimes singing backup for Chaka Khan and Lou Rawls. In 1983, a young producer named Clive Davis heard her perform at a nightclub in Manhattan. He was struck silent. Later, he would say, "I had never heard a voice like that in my life. Pure magic wrapped in grace." He signed her immediately to Arista Records. And with that pen stroke, a quiet girl from Newark was set on a path that would make her the most celebrated voice in modern music. But as she stepped into the light, something deep inside her began to fear the very thing she had prayed for. Because Whitney Houston didn't just want to be famous, she wanted to be free. And fame, as she would learn, is the most beautiful prison in the world. When Whitney Houston's debut album dropped in 1985, the world stopped to listen. Simply titled Whitney Houston, it wasn't just a record, it was a revelation. From the first note of "Saving All My Love for You" to the soaring heights of "Greatest Love of All," her voice felt like something divine. Effortless, radiant, limitless. She didn't just sing songs, she baptized them. Radio stations couldn't stop playing her. Critics called her the voice. People described her as if she were a miracle, because that's how she sounded. Pure control, perfect tone, but with the soul of someone who had known pain. It wasn't technique, It was truth, and the truth made her unstoppable. Her second album, Whitney, arrived in 1987 and broke records no woman had ever touched before. 7 consecutive #1 hits on the Billboard Hot 100, a feat no other artist, male or female, had achieved. Songs like How Will I Know, I Wanna Dance with Somebody, and Didn't We Almost Have It All defined an entire generation's soundtrack. She wasn't just a singer, she was the sound of joy itself. But Whitney's gift came with an invisible cost. Every performance was a demand for perfection. Every appearance, an expectation to be flawless. The world saw her as untouchable, a goddess with no cracks, no struggle, no sin. But inside, Whitney was still that church girl from Newark, craving authenticity in an industry built on illusion. In 1992, she crossed into cinema and history, The Bodyguard. She co-starred with Kevin Costner, and the film became one of the biggest hits of the decade. But what the world remembers isn't the movie, it's the song. I Will Always Love You, a song written by Dolly Parton, reborn through Whitney's voice. That first note, soft, trembling, and then the explosion, that impossible high. It was more than a vocal performance, it was transcendence. It was a woman pouring her soul into the universe and hearing it echo back through every heart on earth. The single sold over 20 million copies worldwide. The soundtrack shattered sales records. The awards poured in. Grammys, AMAs, Billboard, MTV. Whitney Houston had become not just an artist, but an institution, a cultural monument to excellence and grace. She had the fame, the beauty, the money, the world. But as her light burned brighter, her private life began to fade into shadow. In 1992, she married Bobby Brown, the R&B bad boy whose chaos clashed with her calm. Their love was real, passionate, but combustible. He adored her. He envied her. And together they ignited a fire neither could control. Behind closed doors, the fairy tale began to fracture. Drugs, arguments, exhaustion. The whispers grew louder. The woman who had once represented perfection was now becoming the target of tabloid cruelty. Still, she sang. She stood on stage, her voice trembling but unbroken, as if fighting not the world, but herself. Because Whitney Houston wasn't just living her dream, she was trying to survive it. Fame had made Whitney Houston a goddess, but gods too grow tired of worship. By the late 1990s, the woman who had once seemed untouchable was now struggling to hold herself together. The tabloids smelled blood. Every missed note, every late show, every trembling performance was turned into a headline. They no longer wrote about her music. They wrote about her downfall. Whitney's marriage to Bobby Brown had become a storm. They loved hard and fought harder. He was chaos, she was grace. And in that collision, both began to shatter. Drugs became the quiet escape. Cocaine, pills, alcohol, a cocktail of numbness for a woman drowning in too much noise. Her once flawless voice began to tremble. Concerts were canceled. Her radiant smile dimmed into a nervous laugh. The cameras, which had once adored her, now hunted her like prey. Every interview became a defense. Every photo an accusation. In 2002, when she sat down with Diane Sawyer, her voice cracked as she said the words no one wanted to believe. Crack is whack. She laughed, but it wasn't funny. It was the sound of someone trying to keep dignity alive while the world tore her apart. Her health deteriorated. Her marriage collapsed. Her reputation, the perfect princess of pop, was gone. And yet, through all of it, she never stopped being Whitney. Even in chaos, she had grace. Even in pain, she had that spark. In 2009, she released I Look to You, an album that felt more like confession than comeback. The voice wasn't the same. It was older, rougher, scarred. But it was human. And maybe for the first time, Whitney Houston didn't sound like an angel. She sounded like the rest of us. Broken, surviving, still singing. The lyrics told her story. I look to you after all my strength is gone. You could hear every wound, every regret, every ounce of faith she had left. She tried to rebuild, to find peace, to return to that girl from the church in Newark. But fame, once unleashed, doesn't let go easily. It follows, whispers, devours. Those close to her said she was tired. Tired of being the voice. Tired of pretending to be okay. She wanted quiet. She wanted home. She wanted forgiveness. By 2012, her body was thin, her smile faint, but her eyes still carried that soft fire that had once lit up the world. She was preparing to perform again, rehearsing for the Grammy weekend. She told a friend, "I just want people to remember the music." And then, as quietly as a song fading to silence, she was gone. February 11, 2012. The girl who had once sung for God in church, the woman who had made the world believe in love, was found lifeless in a hotel bathtub. Drugs, exhaustion, silence. When the news spread, the world cried not for a fallen star, but for the beauty she had given, and the pain she had carried alone. Because Whitney Houston didn't just die that night. She disappeared, leaving behind an emptiness only her voice could fill. In the years since her death, Whitney Houston has not faded. She has grown. Her voice still floats through radios, films, weddings, and quiet nights when someone presses play and remembers what love once felt like. She isn't gone. She's become eternal sound. Her story, from the church pews of Newark to the global stage, is a reminder of what happens when pure talent meets impossible pressure. But her legacy is not tragedy. It is triumph. Because even after all the pain, all the headlines, all the judgment, what remains is the voice. No one has ever sung like her. Not before, not after. That tone, warm, powerful, divine, could make a single syllable sound like a prayer. She had the control of a classical singer and the soul of a gospel preacher. Her performances were never performances at all. They were acts of grace. Listen to "I Will Always Love You Today," and you'll still feel it. That impossible swell, that raw explosion of emotion that somehow feels personal, as if she were singing just for you. That's why, for millions, she's not a memory, she's presence. Whitney's legacy goes far beyond her voice. She broke barriers for Black women in entertainment, becoming one of the first to dominate pop, R&B, and Hollywood at once. Before Beyoncé, before Rihanna, there was Whitney, the blueprint, the dream, the standard. She made it possible for the world to see Black excellence not as exception, but as expectation. Her foundation continues to help children through education and music. Her family, especially her mother Sissy, guards her name with quiet pride. And her daughter Bobby Christina, her mirror, her melody, joined her too soon in 2015. Their story became a haunting echo, a reminder that love and loss often sing the same song. Yet what truly defines Whitney's legacy is the humanity behind the voice. She was flawed, yes, but her flaws made her real. She laughed loudly, loved deeply, trusted too easily. She carried her faith like armor and her wounds like jewelry. And through it all, she never stopped believing in love. When the documentary Whitney was released, the world finally saw the full picture. Not just the icon, but the woman, the shy girl, the mother, the friend, the one who prayed before every show, the one who still called her mother after every performance, the one who wanted to be remembered, not as perfect, but as true, and she will be. Because Whitney Houston's story isn't about falling, it's about rising, over and over again, through every note, every tear, every song. In the end, she gave the world something few ever could, proof that beauty can come from pain, and that love, real, aching, eternal love, can live forever in a voice. That's why when people hear her today, they still stop, still close their eyes, still whisper, "That's Whitney," because somewhere between the lyrics and the silence, she's still here. It was a Saturday evening in Los Angeles, just one night before the Grammys. Whitney was supposed to perform. Instead, the world received a headline that felt like heartbreak made real. But maybe in some quiet way, she knew her time was near. In her final weeks, those closest to her said she seemed softer, reflective, even peaceful. She talked about God often. She listened to her old gospel records, the same ones that filled her childhood home. She smiled when she spoke of her daughter, Bobby Christina, and she told a friend, "I've sung everything I needed to sing." It sounded like surrender, but also like completion. When her body was flown back to Newark, the city stood still. Thousands lined the streets as her casket, covered in white flowers, was carried into New Hope Baptist Church, the same church where a young girl once stood before a congregation and sang her first hallelujah. Now that same voice was returning home. Inside the church, stars filled the pews. Aretha Franklin, Kevin Costner, Clive Davis, Stevie Wonder. But for once there was no stage, no spotlight, only love. Kevin Costner spoke through tears. "You weren't just good enough, Whitney. You were the greatest." When the choir sang, "I Will Always Love You," no one sang along. No one could, because no voice, not one, could ever touch hers. And in that silence, you could almost hear her again, that perfect, trembling note rising into the heavens, as if she was saying goodbye the only way she knew how, through music. Today, more than a decade later, her name still brings a lump to the throat. Her songs are not nostalgia. They are prayers for love, for forgiveness, for the beauty that never dies. Whitney Houston's story is not one of tragedy, but of transcendence. She fell, yes, but she also soared. And in doing so, she showed us that even the broken can make something eternal out of their pain. So maybe that's how we should remember her. Not as the woman the world lost, but as the voice the world still hears. Because somewhere beyond sound and sorrow, beyond fame and failure, there's a quiet stage lit by soft, golden light. And there she stands again, barefoot, smiling, singing not for us, but for herself. And if you listen closely enough, you can almost hear it. That whisper of grace, that final, eternal refrain, "I will always love you."